G'day, ZiggyD here. Borderlands, the pre-sequel, is just around the corner, only a few days away, and in the lead up to launch, I want to make a few videos just talking a bit about the game for you guys. In this video, we're going to start at the very beginning, and I'm going to explain what exactly Borderlands, the pre-sequel is, because I see quite a bit of confusion about not only this series and what type of game it is, but also what the pre-sequel is specifically, whether it's an expansion, a standalone game, or what. So we'll go over each of those things so you guys have a clear idea of what this game actually is and whether it's something you might be interested in picking up. So firstly, the Borderlands series, for those of you guys who are less familiar or only familiar with the game in passing, it is a loot-based action RPG shooter. It's essentially what you would get if you took a game like Diablo or Path of Exile and then cross-mated it with the shooter genre, with the first-person shooter genre. So you get basically Diablo with guns, to put it simply. It has everything you'd expect from a fully-fledged action RPG, and I think this is something people miss a lot. They're just like, oh, it's just a shooter with a bit of loot in it. It actually really has the depth in terms of the loot, especially an action RPG like Diablo or Path of Exile has. You have a huge number of guns that can drop, potential guns that can drop, with heavy RNG on each of those things. So each thing that dropped undergoes a randomization process, and then the actual stats on the items can undergo randomization processes as well. Just like in other action RPGs, there's also different rarity tiers, so there's, common weapons, there's rarer weapons, and even legendary weapons that you can find. Borderlands 2 and Presequel also incorporate some cool extra mechanics, which you don't see too often in the action RPG genre, but are something that I think is pretty good, and it's that sometimes specific items can drop from specific enemies, so if you want to farm for a particular legendary, you'll have to farm a particular sort of boss, which I think is pretty cool, and it lets you see more of the content in the game. The game also has a similar sort of setup in terms of builds as what you'd expect. It's not as deep as something like Path of Exile, but there's still a lot of theory crafting and min-maxing to be done with character builds in your gear. So essentially, you pick from a class, and then you pick from a number of different skill trees, put together all of your skills, and then come up with a build based on that, and then you complement that build with your gear, or you build around certain items that you find. So as a big action RPG fan myself, playing countless hours of Diablo 2, Diablo 3, Diablo 1, and Path of Exile, and even a lot of other RPGs in there, Borderlands is like a natural extension for me. I played the previous games in the past. I never really played them as deeply as I played other action RPGs, but I'm incredibly hyped for Presequel, and I do think I'm going to be getting into this game pretty hardcore at launch and for a good time after launch as well, so I'm very excited for this release. So Borderlands the Presequel specifically is the sequel to Borderlands 1, but the prequel to Borderlands 2, so it's kind of clever really. It's the pre-sequel, it's a pre-sequel. It's a game that slots itself in between those two separate stories. Now in terms of the story itself, it covers the backstory of Handsome Jack, the main antagonist in Borderlands 2. This is pretty cool because Handsome Jack was, I think, one of the most liked characters in Borderlands, or the most hated, most loved to be hated. He was an excellent antagonist, an excellent bad guy, and he was very, very entertaining. So in this pre-sequel, we're exploring his character, and in the pre-sequel, he's not necessarily a bad guy. It's kind of showing what he was, back in the day, and the things that led him to be where he was in Borderlands 2. So it's a pretty interesting setup for the story, and the Borderlands series, I think, has had a pretty interesting storyline overall. A bit more impressive than other action RPGs, actually, so it kind of strays from the genre a little bit there, being a little bit more story-heavy, which is quite interesting. Now, in terms of Borderlands the Pre-Sequel and its actual design as a game, this is a standalone game, so it's not an expansion for Borderlands 2, it's not a DLC, and it's not really an expand-alone either, like we see from some other genres. But it is being built on the same engine as Borderlands 2, so it is something that was cheaper for the studio to make, a kind of an extra game, a spin-off game essentially, if you will. Now because of this, because it's been built on the same engine, the game is actually only coming out on PC, PS3, and Xbox. It's not coming out on the PS4, Xbox One, because they would have had to have designed a new engine for those new consoles. They said that they may release it on PS4 and Xbox One if there's enough demand to port it over to those consoles, but as it stands at the moment, they'll only be on previous gen consoles and on PC platform. Now in terms of game mechanics, the game is not going to be as different as you would expect Borderlands 3 to be from Borderlands 2. Again, although it's a game between Borderlands 1 and 2, in terms of game mechanics, it's going to be kind of between Borderlands 2 and 3. Now, it does add a series of changes to gameplay though that should really make it play differently, and I had a chance to have a hands-on of the game at EB Expo. I got to play it for 10-15 minutes, and I really got a chance to feel like those differences. The primary differences are that the game is a lot faster paced. It is set on the moon, so there's lower gravity. You have things like extra jump boosters. You can use oxygen to boost yourself higher, and then you can use a butt slam ability to slam back down to the ground really quickly. So this speeds up combat a lot. It plays a lot faster. In addition to this change, they improved the accuracy of hip firing, and there's even several builds that take advantage of hip firing. So this again speeds up combat and allows you to be more mobile. It kind of plays a bit like an older style shooter like Quake or something like that, rather than a modern duck and cover style shooter, which is, in my opinion, a big breath of fresh air for the series. Borderlands has never been a slow game by FPS standards, but when you kind of combine the large open spaces with the gameplay of the game, and with only having the ability to jump limited distances, and having to actually utilize cover, it did feel slow at times, I thought. But this really changes that. It's less of a cover-based shooter and more of a high mobility, faster paced shooter, so that's pretty cool stuff. They've also changed the loot system from Borderlands 2 to, as the developers put it, hopefully be a little less grindy and a bit more interesting. So we should see less bullet spongy mobs than what we saw in the end of Borderlands 2, and also guns that you find will be useful for much longer. They've changed the scaling of weapons and things like that. So overall, pretty good changes. I was pretty impressed with my hands-on, and I'm very much looking forward to how this plays out. So hopefully you guys are hyped, and hopefully this explains for you some of kind of exactly what Borderlands the Presequel is. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.